Hello and welcome to all of you to this program organized by the Economic Times ETCIO in association with uh, Sears and Google Cloud. Now, my name is Mukbil Ahmed. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Mukbil Ahmed. I'm the executive editor at ETCIO, and I must thank you for making it to this event, braving Mumbai traffic, and spending this Friday evening with us. And I must express my gratitude. I would also like to. Could I please request everyone, people standing at the back, to kindly take the chairs, if that's possible? So, all right. The topic for today's program is transforming tech first businesses with cloud. Now, we all understand, and this is something that we have been witnessing for the past 2 years, 3 years, I would say, where digital adoption has really accelerated. Also, due to the existence of unprecedented circumstances which existed for the past 2 3 years, and which ensured that taking the digital route was no more an option or a choice. It became a compulsion. It became the primary business model. Now, so as enterprises, try to increase agility, scale, competitiveness, at the heart of all this digital transformation, I feel, and I believe a lot of you would have similar feelings, is that cloud computing sits at the heart of all digital transformation efforts and digital efforts. Why do I say that? Is because it offers a lot of advantages, for example, agility, scale, competitiveness. Besides, it also will be the fulcrum around which new and emerging technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, blockchain, all of these would revolve around it, with with the central core being formed with cloud computing technologies. Now, I think I have spoken enough. I basically wanted to lay down the context, the ground, uh, which would justify a program, an elaborate program like this, where we are going to discuss with eminent technology leaders the relevance, the importance, and the way forward as far as cloud computing is concerned. And I think that there couldn't have been a better time to discuss all this given the times that we are living in. And also because we have a lineup of extremely knowledgeable, insightful guests that I see sitting in front of me. And I hope the audience here will have a lot of interesting takeaways from the discussions that follow. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. I would now like to invite the next speaker, who is Mr. Shashi Tripathi, Senior Director Sales, Sears, to kindly come and lay down some more context.
We are in Mumbai, so I'll start. Namaskar, Mandari. My name is Shashi Tripathi. Um, in the morning today, and I'm really happy, I'll tell you why. In the morning today, when we were discussing internally, we were thinking this is 30th of September. Naren would agree, he's chasing deals. This is end of the quarter. नवरात्रि का वीकेंड है, राइट? पता नहीं कितने लोग आएंगे, how many people will turn up. Then somebody said, in the same hotel next door there is dandiya happening. So we said, if nobody else turns up, dandiya khel lenge. But thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your valuable time. I know we all are trying to get together, mingle together. People keep on talking of lots of stuff. This is by no means a revenge conference. This is by no means a revenge meetup. This is an opportunity to interact and talk to you folks as much as possible for something which we are passionate about, which Google Cloud is passionate about. So that was the first part that I definitely wanted to let you know, that we are extremely happy to see you here. Right? The what you see on the screen, EVLOS, is an anagram for solve. And we are trying to take a simple narrative. All of us are tired of this digital transformation itself. We are trying to do digital transformation every single day. Can we do it a little differently? And that's where this whole theme of EVLOS came in. Can we approach this problem a little differently? Right? Transformation is the name of the game. We all have to do it. Digital transformation is as important to the core of lots of businesses, and we'll speak to it. But there are two factors that we want to cover through this evening. First of all, and what you can see, you all of you being within your organization trying to get this digital transformation off the rack, doing multiple things. We want to suggest two things which you can do differently. And it is not that it is rocket science. If there is a Google, if there is a platform, if there is a CSP who has built 9 products of billion users on the cloud, why wouldn't you want to work, and why you should not work with them? If there is a company which has built these products, they are running these products securely from single users or users to businesses, why wouldn't you want to work with this platform or these cloud CSP providers? And then there is a company who's been working with this cloud provider for the last 14, 15, 16 years and taken 3,000 plus customers on their cloud journey from a small application to a large transformation process. Why wouldn't you work with them? So, what we are seeking from you folks today is, in this journey of digital transformation, can you take these two partners along? And maybe we'll make your journey a little different. Google Cloud and Sears. That's what we are here to discuss. I don't know if this works, but let me try. Yes. There is a Twitter influencer. His name is Naval Ravikant. I don't know how many of you know, but this quote is from him, right? Naval Ravikant. And I thought this was so freaking relevant, and I'll tell you why. The digital natives themselves who started companies in the cloud or were born in the cloud are being disrupted by another digital native. And companies which are as traditional and as old as many, they are incubating companies within themselves to disrupt somebody else. So, whatever may be your business, any software company will make your business their business. And that's the whole idea, right? Are we prepared for a venture? Are we prepared for this eventuality? This is really powerful the way you want to think about it. So the first part of this is your competition in whatever industry you may be is going to be a software company. It's going to be a software company. And we all know that in some shapes or sizes that we are talking about. So this stays, if this stays with you, maybe we'll start thinking a little differently. If I'm a bank, or if I'm a retailer, if I'm a hospital guy, every digital native or every software company can be my competition at one single point in time. And maybe that will spur the juices to start thinking a little differently. I thought this was relevant, and that's why we included it here. Whether you are getting disrupted, you are preparing to disrupt somebody, right? Or you are planning to take on a totally different market, a greenfield, brownfield market, a partner like Google Cloud and Sears can be part of that journey. This is a portion of just a small subset of 3,000 plus customers that these two partners together are being servicing. It's a simple example. You just take a look at the slide and I'll highlight. You will see a Rapido and an Ola there, but you'll also see a Royal Enfield right out there on the slide. Both spectrum of organizations, primarily. You can probably see, I don't know which other organizations I can pick up. You can see InShots, which is the new age media, and also DB Digital on that. Again, both spectrum of the world. They are both media companies. We work with likes of a Flipkart, but we also work with Titan. Both are retailers. We work with manufacturing companies on both sides of the world, somebody who's aggregating and somebody who's manufacturing. So this, and the point of putting this, that the partnership that these two organizations have, of course, Google Cloud being the big brother and B being their partners for services, we have been servicing both spectrum of organizations and companies. And maybe some of the thought processes, what we have done for these organizations, can be an aid or a conduit to do your digital transformation a little differently. I'll keep harping on this difference because that's the theme, that's what I was told to do, but that's what the whole idea of difference is all about. You can't be away from the locations where these transformations are happening or where these disruptions are happening. Google Cloud is omnipresent. We can't be as many places as Google Cloud, but we still are trying to be in as many locations around the globe where the hubs and where innovation is happening. So that's what Sears is doing. In the core, if I just talk of Sears, because Naren is here and he'll talk as much and he'll espouse for you about Google Cloud, I can only tell you at the core of what Sears is, we are a cloud native engineering services company. We have been doing this job for the last 16 years. When the first service of Google Cloud was launched, we were there to build a product or a service for a customer. By the way, it was App Engine. There was nothing else in Google Cloud at that point in time. And we have been working on Google Cloud since then. Today, Google Cloud has more than 150 services, right? Across infra, data, security, all the portfolio that you put together. And we have been there learning along with them, learning on the way, sometimes being successful, sometimes wobbling, learning along with the customers and doing what is required. But at the core, this is a tech engineering services company focused purely on the cloud. Again, if you want to try out what we have done for lots of other customers along with Google Cloud, do talk to us. This is what we do. Everything what is there on the slide, we cover everything. You want to set up your accounts, your billing, your just a simple part of it. But going below, we have moved server farms of 30,000, 40,000 servers to the cloud. We have that expertise. If any kind of ops which you talk about, ML ops, data ops, DevOps, DevSecOps, we have the ability to do that. Automation, insights, data. I'm sick and tired of this terminology that data is the new oil. But before you get anything on the oil, pipeline lagana padega. So you'll have to build the pipeline, get the lake done, get the warehouse done. And then comes the value out on the other spectrum of it, which is your analytics and ML and AI. And we have done that portion for a lot of folks across. Breaking large applications into small microservices so that can be running on containers, taken to the cloud, very, very much up our alley. Right? I'm not going to go through all of it. You just want to tweak your re-engineer your code and manage services. You want to run everything on the cloud, but you want your real hardcore engineers to focus on larger problems, somebody else to take care of the cloud infrastructure, happy enough to lend a hand there. That's what we do. That's what CS is about. This is not a very long presentation. This is my last slide. And I want to tell you this. This ethos is what we are living by. When I told you we started 16 years ago, when we started building App Engine, imagine we have taken 15 years to know those 150 services which Google Cloud offers. And we keep learning every day. We keep reinventing ourselves. We call ourselves a tech startup. And if every company is trying to become a tech company, we want to be that tech startup, enabling all the tech startups. Do help us, basically, or rather help us understand your problems, whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to solve for the cloud. We, along with Google Cloud, will be happy to serve you, help you a little differently. There is nothing more exciting than you take a small problem to solve and run across, right? And the better part of world, basically, which excites us a lot, that the passion that is needed to solve the problem for a budding organization, right? A small startup, a company which was funded 2-3 years back, who are basically standing on their feet or just about getting the standing on the feet, their challenges and their problems are exactly the same as of a large organization who's incubating a small unit under them. We work with large banks, we work with large manufacturing companies, and they are also trying to build those small units. It's really fascinating. You walk into there are companies which we have seen now. You go there, they have hired those 20 odd somethings, 100 people within the company, just to make those organizations cool, that cool ideas can crop in. And people are starting to build and solve problems from there. So there is innovation happening all across the board, all spectrum of companies. And tech is the common denominator which probably we can help. We can't bring and change the world. I think there is enough and more people within your own organizations who can think about the problems, who can bring up with the use cases. But if you want to solve from the tech part of it, we'll be happy enough to do that. So, Sayers is the tech startup, or we want to continue being this tech startup. And for all your tech ambitions, happy enough, tech ambitions, let me qualify that, on the cloud, we will be happy enough to serve you. I'll stop there. I think I might have managed my time for 7 or 8 minutes. I'll invite Mukbil back again. Again, thank you very much for taking this time. You wouldn't imagine how difficult it would have been to play Dandiya when we came for a event. So thank you again and welcome. The agenda will follow. We have the Google speakers, we have a panel discussion and then networking. But that's all we are here for. So thank you once again and all the very best for having a very, very fruitful conversation.
Thank you, Shashi, for that extremely cordial talk. And I am also hoping that some Dandiya is going to be there after the end of this program. You will have to see. So, thanks a lot, Shashi. I would now request Naren Kachru, Sales Lead Digital Natives, Corporate Business, Google Cloud, to kindly come and share his thoughts on how do you solve for innovation and how does Google Cloud solve some of the toughest problems that enterprises face today. The stage is all yours, Naren.
Good evening, everybody. He said, how do you solve for innovation? I don't. I really am. Google Cloud does, so we'll go through that story. I've been accused in the past of running significantly over my time in presentations like this. People think that I like to hear the sound of my own voice. So I need a volunteer here who can show me the time and say it's up. But don't cheat on me. So if somebody can give me a cue, can I? नहीं आप तो करोगे यार, but I need positive feedback. But if you guys can keep me honest on this, I'll be out of this stage in less than 10 minutes. There's a time in history where things change and they change radically, right? When these changes happen, you don't even remember how things were done in the past. Take communication for example, right? If you are as old as I am, you know that we had to go at 8:30, stand in a PCO line to try and make an STD call if you are calling out of town, right? That was not very long back, and that seems so distant in the past now, right? How we learn, how we communicate, how we write, how we are as a society, right? Those tectonic changes happen extremely quickly and they are there forever, right? And in that sense, I'm old enough to tell you that I have seen probably 2 eras of this tectonic change in the technology area that I've been associated with for the last 2 decades plus. One was the era of what I call the VM cloud, right? Which was an era where, people try to virtualize their infrastructure. Departments no longer needed to buy servers. They had virtual servers. They didn't even know what the physical infrastructure behind it was. Then about 10 years back, a tectonic shift happened when that era came to an end and the hyperscaler cloud era began, right? And the new age startup companies that are here, and I had the opportunity to meet some of you earlier, wouldn't even know how to buy a server or who to even reach out to for buying a server anymore, right? I mean, we are in that era came when people, started, and that was, I would call it an infrastructure cloud era, right? It's an era where, there was this tectonic shift where people started getting compute capacity VMs on demand, pay as you go. It was a major moment, don't get me wrong. But I think some of the underlying things that era solved, there were still inefficiencies in that. Because what happened is, you took the underlying VM era infrastructure and put that VM era infrastructure in the cloud, almost lifted and shifted it. I think where we are today is actually going to be, and I'm no Nostradamus to predict this firmly, but I think we are at a place in history where we are knocking the doors of what I call a transformation cloud era. And I think this is a very momentous sort of point in the technology landscape, or in the technology spectrum, where there'll be a new era of cloud that will come to being, and it will no longer be lift and shift. It will be about using cloud most effectively to solve for digital needs. So I think with that, I'll sort of pivot on three things, and this is what we are here to solve for, is for solving for innovation, solving for your end customers, and solving for industry needs. This is our mission statement. Our mission is to accelerate organizations' ability digitally to transform your business. But essentially, what we are attempting to do in Google Cloud, and this is sort of core to us, is the ability to give you, as Shashi mentioned earlier, the 2.5 decades, and we just celebrated Google's 24th birthday yesterday, is to give you that 2.5 decades of knowledge and innovation that we have created around data and using data to solve world's big problems in the hands of everybody, right? So if you look at some of the products and services, I'm not going to get into all of Google Cloud's products and services today, but what we are attempting to do is to make those tools that service, the 9 products that serve more than 1 billion users today in the hands of everybody, so that they can innovate at the same scale, maybe even faster and better, using the technology that we have already created. No longer VMs, no longer just infrastructure, virtual servers and storage, but overall, the power of the cloud itself. So I spoke a little bit about this already. I'm not going to reiterate, but I think we are at a point of time in history where we are going to look at cloud very differently than just being a platform to serve our needs for compute. And we believe that there are 5 critical pillars in this transformation cloud journey that we are committed to. We want to make a data-first approach on cloud. We want to take data as the first-class citizen on cloud, and I think we have made huge progress and strides in innovation around data and being a cloud that services the needs, growing needs of your data very effectively. And I'll touch, of the 5 pillars, because of paucity of time, I'll touch only on the data cloud pillar a little bit deeper in the next slide. I think that's important for you to take back from this session. We are an open source company. We contribute massively to open source, whether that is, the Kubernetes project or others, right? So we do believe that the ability for us to remain open and the ability for you to innovate on top of that open source stack is going to benefit the larger community. So that's the second. We also believe that during the pandemic taught us this, that the world of collaboration in the future is going to look very different. The way people communicate with each other, the way information is exchanged within an organization is going to feel very different. So workspaces, which is, a lot of you use our services for email collaboration, etc., I think is going to also continue to remain central to our mission to bring the world closer together. We are the most trusted cloud platform. We have had no breach in Google or in Google Cloud or any of our services in the last 24 years. We invest heavily on security. Security is the most important pillar for us. And there's a distinct difference and I don't want to bring our competition here. If you talk to our competitors, they'll tell you about shared responsibility model. They'll say, okay, this responsibility is shared. For us, the responsibility is mutual, right? So we want for us to be partners for you in your security journey. We just don't want to say that, we end here and you take the rest of it with you. So the tools, the investments, including the latest investments and mergers that we have done in this space are testimony enough that we are very serious about our mission on security. We are the most sustainable cloud. We are already zero carbon. We are already a zero carbon cloud. We buy renewable energy to power all our data centers, and that's central to our mission for a cleaner, greener planet in the future. So these are the 5 pillars of our mission. Why do I think it's important is because customers are asking us these 5 questions. Are we the best at understanding our data, right? And all of you are aware there's different formats. The data of today, and I come from an era where, and I was joking with somebody that the first database technology I worked on in my career was a technology called IMS. Anybody heard of IMS before? Not in this room? Oh shit. Oh, you did. It's a hierarchical database only found on mainframe systems. Thank you, sir. I'm glad I have some company. But, the ability to handle only a few megs or gigs of data to where we are today, where we generate more than that on our cell phones every day. I think, I do believe that you need capability that's there in Google Cloud to make sense of that data and power your artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to get deeper insights from that data. We do believe we have the best technology infrastructure. I'm not going to get into the details of VMs and chipsets and cores, but the ability for us to give you the infrastructure based on your needs, custom VMs, the ability for you to power your applications both on Intel and AMD platforms without having to make a change and go to ARM architectures, etc., is an extremely powerful statement that we are making. We are the best hybrid workplace. Without doubt, I think all the digital natives and startups of today do use and trust Google's Workspace product. And Sears is a very able partner in helping you bring that to life. As I said, we have invested deeply into security, and we have a product set where we take security even beyond the boundaries of your application. So you can actually use some of our products, tools and technology to not just secure your infrastructure, but also secure your whole environment from everything from DDoS attacks to layer 7 security and stuff like that. So there's a whole lot of investment in that. And we are addressing the most important challenges facing our world through our sustainable cloud approach. The only one pillar that I wanted to touch to you about was the data cloud, which I think is central to our mission, is most important. There is a vast majority, 3/4 of companies today that are unable to realize value of their data, right? We are solving for this problem by making that approach extremely simple and extremely seamless for you. The ability for you to build and use data centrally through our BigQuery platform and through other tools and technology that we offer is extremely powerful. We have the only serverless data platform that is available out there today, right? People claim they have one, all our competitors do. Believe me, this is the only at scale, truly serverless data platform in BigQuery. It powers customers of ours like Twitter and Google itself at billions of records per minute scale. So it's a technology that is proven, it is trusted. We have a customer that I spoke to in Bangalore, a fintech called SmartCoin. I don't know if any of you know them. They've just got recently acquired by Neo. And I was speaking to their CTO, and they did a very unique architectural pattern on BigQuery And basically they created, instead of creating those of you who know data warehousing, instead of creating a single denormalized table on which you can run queries, they actually put every single customer of theirs in a separate table altogether. They were able to test the scale of BigQuery running 10 million tables in their environment in a single sort of setup. And they have received phenomenal results on their query times. So that's the scale at which Indian customers here locally in India are testing and using BigQuery. So if there's one place to start, I would urge all of you in the room to get a, if there's one place to get a first taste of what Google Cloud can really do and what Google Cloud can really power for you, is to use the ability of Google's data cloud to power your analytics and to power your machine learning, right? We have machine learning built into the data platform seamlessly and naturally and integrated out of the box. These are all the customers, and there are just a few names of the large ones that you have heard of, the likes of Twitter and Walmart and Uber, who use Google Cloud's data platform exclusively to power their analytics. So with that said, I just want to conclude by saying that while we are growing, our aspirations of growth and our aspirations to service more customers is extremely strong. We want to be of service to you. We want for you to use the power of Google Cloud to power your digital transformation and solve for the next. And a lot of companies, both digital natives, traditional enterprises, innovation hubs within traditional enterprises are using Google Cloud very effectively, very powerfully to power the future. And there are several, and there are some Google Cloud customers in the audience today. I would urge for you to, during the networking session, to share your thoughts and feedback with us. But we really do believe that there is an opportunity for us also to innovate together. I also want to, before I conclude, want to tell you that a lot of our engineering teams for Google Cloud are now in India. We are already, doing a lot of Google Cloud core engineering development work out of both Bangalore and Hyderabad. And very soon we are going to have a Google Cloud Development Center come up in Pune as well. We have already announced that. So there's going to be a lot of Google Cloud's core engineering work that's going to happen out of this country. We would like for our customers to participate in that journey and be innovation partners with our engineering teams. Your feedback and the scale at which customers in India operate would be extremely meaningful for us to take that feedback and put that back into our product line and make these products even better, scalable, and these products made for India and made in India, by the way. So in conclusion, I don't know who is keeping the time. I don't know if I'm over 10 minutes, but I think I am. I just want to say it's a cloud platform that's easy to use. We have seen our customers save a ton of money moving to Google Cloud. Easily 25 to 30%. I've been asked not to say that out loud. I don't know who's recording this, if you can clip it out later, but I've seen more as well. We are an industry first cloud, and I just want to, maybe during our panel discussion, and I know I have the company of a few fintechs. I want to talk to you about the innovation specifically for India that we are doing on industry cloud. For example, UPI switch as a service is an offering that we have already GA'd, part of it, and part of it we will GA very soon. And this is an industry first solution for fintech or financial services industry that we have on the Google Cloud platform. And we are the cleanest cloud on the planet right now. So with that, I want to thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for coming to this event. I really appreciate it. Shashi said that we shouldn't be doing this on a quarter end, but that's okay. I don't think in a business like ours, which is a consumption business, quarters matter. It's what you do with us incrementally each day, how you use us to power your next generation products each day that matters. So we are not closing deals per se. We are trying to see how we can service you more meaningfully each day, quarter end irrespective. So with that, I'll request to moderator to please come back and take the stage from here. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Naren. And as the saying goes, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I guess you would have understood what is coming up next. Now we have a customer presentation where he's going to talk about what we are setting ourselves up for, how uniquely did Sears and Google Cloud enable us. And to do this, I would request Ashwin Waknis, Principal Architect, Innoplexus Consultancy Services, to kindly take to the stage and share his thoughts with us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Guys, able to hear me? Okay. So, essentially, the tagline that I have put here is accelerating drug discovery. So, obviously, we are in the space of life sciences, and the challenge that we are trying to solve is manifold. But primarily, one of the things that we see is, if you know something about drug discovery or life sciences, the information, like any other domain, continues to grow exponentially. You have data coming up every 70 odd days in life sciences. That was probably 2 years back. Maybe it's much shorter now. Obviously, the other part of the piece is that the drug companies today spend about $1 billion, and I was recently reading it could be as much as $2.4 billion to get a drug to the market, right? It takes about 10 years for them to come up with a drug on an average. And only 12% of potential candidates of drugs go into the first phase of clinical trials. And from the first phase on to regulatory approval, only 10% go through, right? So the sort of success rate is extremely low. And that's why they end up spending so much money. So essentially the problem they have is, how do we speed up this drug discovery, right? I mean, if you can shrink it down from 10 years to 8 years, 7 years, that would be saving them cost and obviously getting drugs to the right patients much earlier than before. And one of the things, the other sort of a stat that also would be useful for you also to understand is, every time a drug discovery sort of initiative comes up, you have the whole chemical landscape of potential molecules, right? And if you know what that landscape will look like, it's somewhere in the close of 10 raised to 30. So there are potentially 10 raised to 30 molecules that can become a drug, right? Now, this is really a small needle in a big haystack. So the idea here for us, so the problem that we were trying to solve for, for pharma companies or life sciences companies, biotech, CROs, and so on, is how do we help you with finding the right information faster, right? Like I spoke earlier about, so much data is there. So what we have done is we have built one of the largest sort of data oceans for life sciences data. So we crawl about 95% of what's out there on the web and even in the enterprises where they have given us access. And we have crawled that, cleaned that data up, built the whole pipeline of various entities that we have within life sciences, right? I mean, you have information about drugs, you have molecules, you have genes, proteins, pathways, so on and so forth, right? So we have what we call as different asset classes. So there are, potentially, I think 30, 40 different asset classes. Each asset class is essentially, thousands or tens of thousands of sources of information that we crawl, get it, and run it through our pipeline. And the other piece of that puzzle is, one of the important parts here is to understand that, you get to different aspects of this data. Like, you have information about genes, you have information about proteins, you have information about, various entities within life sciences. But how do they together make sense, right? So we have built one of the largest ontologies, which is basically a dictionary for life sciences, with I think about 30 million plus entities that help us make sense of that data, right? So we connect it using that ontology and sort of building a graph database, sort of a very large graph database. So think of LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn is like a graph database. You have people and you're connected to companies connected to their institutions and so on, right? So now we have this large graph database that allows us to connect and make sense of, how a particular molecule is going to affect a particular disease through various pathways, through the genes or, whether genes or proteins and different cells and so on, right? So that's something that we have built, which is sort of the biggest USP that we have. And that's a solution. And the solution that sits on top of this large data ocean, so to say, is what we call as Ontosite, which is a product that we have with various sort of features. But essentially, it's like, we have sort of the audacity here to call it the Google of life sciences. But essentially, the idea is for us to be able to present that to pharma companies and say, hey, you want to look for any information related to life sciences, you can take this platform, right? Because you can now look up a person, what we call as, sort of a key knowledge, key opinion leader, as we call him. So you type on a person, they will tell you about, what patents that person has, which hospital he's associated, which, patents or, articles he has written and so on, right? So, or you type in a molecule and it tells you about everything about that. So through a graph database, we are able to sort of project that, to the person who is looking for. So you can look at any entity they want. So that's essentially the problem we are trying to solve. The other one, I'm going to skip to this one. The other problem that we are trying to solve is more patient-centric. Today, what happens is the other piece of puzzle that pharma is looking at is patient data. For any kind of research, they are looking at patient data. Now, today there is no mechanism, or at least no known or a very simplified mechanism for them to access patient data. So what we are trying to build is a more democratized patient participation marketplace where patients in hospitals can put their medical records, of course, again, running through a pipeline which anonymizes that data so that nobody can know their name, phone number, and email address, and so on. Anonymized, clean, and qualified data, so which qualifies certain criteria into our marketplace. So now we have a marketplace very much like, sort of a simple example being Amazon is a marketplace, right? So we have now a marketplace for patient data, which now can be accessed by biotechs, CROs, pharma companies, and they come in and say, hey, we want to run a research and survey for, I need 100 patients who have lung cancer, small cell lung cancer, above 50 smokers, something like that, right? And they come there and they pick up the data, they pay for the data, and that data and that the compensation goes back all the way to the patient, right? So the patient is willingly participating. Now he's getting return for, he's sharing his data and essentially helping the companies do research, right? So right now, as you can see, there is no such mechanism that exists, and this is probably one of the few marketplaces that we have out there right now. Just a quick sort of an overview of our tech stack. We are still, a 300 people company, so I wouldn't call this a very small startup, but we are still a cloud first company. So, we have been using Google along with our partner Sears for many, many years now, and continue to sort of grow our relationship the new services that they're coming out with. So that's so the cloud first is one aspect of it. We are building a blockchain a way for us to. So what happens is when you have patient data in that is getting accessed by people, we want to make sure that patient data can be made sure that it is ownership is well defined, essentially, right? So that is something that we use a blockchain for. The other piece, of course, we use blockchain for is for end-to-end encryption for our chat messages between patients and so on. And of course, the whole data is essentially connected into a graph database using our AI, proprietary AI models that we use to make sure that all the different entities that we capture within our asset classes are now connected into a sort of a sensible graph database, right? So that's a lot of AI models that we have built over a period of time, over a period of last many years. Okay, just probably the last slide. Gunjan Bharadwaj is our CEO. He started the company about 9-10 years back. He's a graduate of IIT Mumbai. And I think one of the reasons that he started was his very close acquaintance was struggling to find solution to his indication or a disease that he had. I mean, he was suffering from cancer, but they didn't have a lot of information. So he decided to jump into this area. And that's where we started. We are based out of Germany, but our development center is primarily in Pune right now. And with that, I think this is just the last slide. Thank you very much.
We have a full house today. It's great, coming as it does after a big break of 2-3 years where, we have now come to a situation where we are, face to face with so many people. It's a real delight to see people in flesh and blood, away from that virtual world that we were all inhabiting. Now, I would really want to, start with Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, we see that your product has been, something that you built was revolutionary, in the fintech space as we see it, where you really made loans and lending very accessible to people. Now, it would be great if you could shed some light on it.
Yeah, so from a product perspective, we enable loans for folks who don't have access to loans in India, right? So it's amazing, right? There are probably 50 to 100 banks and probably 10 to 20,000 NBFCs already in the country, right? But a lot of folks don't have access to credit. So we tried to enable it by leveraging technology, leveraging data science, leveraging I would say AI, ML or rudimentary AI, ML is what I will say. We are still learning up that curve to enable them and to provide credit so that we can really find the patterns, right? It's all about the patterns in terms of who will pay you back. I think that's the most important thing in lending, right? If you can identify, then you are sorted. So as the previous speakers were saying, we started off with cloud. We in fact wouldn't know where to buy the server from. So otherwise, if the cloud was not there, we wouldn't even have started the company probably, right? So we started off first of all from the cloud, and then we have built a fairly good platform so that we can provide credit.
Wonderful. So, what were the typical challenges that you were confronted with, when you embarked on this journey, which had so much of innovation in it?
So I would say, there were both challenges on the tech side and the non-tech side, right? So on the tech side, we were just learning to be on the cloud, right? And figure out how that thing works. And also managing data. I think that's a continuous challenge where we believe that yes, we are probably digital native, but we don't manage data as well as we should be. And in hindsight, it always looks that, yeah, we should have done A, B, C, D, and then we have not done that. So I think managing data properly so that it is useful later on, that was, I would say, on the fairly big challenge on the tech side. On the business side and on the regulatory side, right, lending is a fairly regulated industry, right? So making sure that we meet all the regulations and all the guidelines that the government or the RBI has given, and playing within those, I would say, goalposts, I think, were the big challenges.
Wonderful. So, when you spoke about, the data management bit as being one of the biggest challenges, this in fact provides me an excellent segue into my next speaker, whose company is into data analytics and all of that. So, Alok, really going on to you, how do you see the emergence of new technologies really making an impact on the tech space as we see them now?
I guess it's data which is definitely everywhere, and it's one thing to say that data is a new oil, or you can probably mine a lot of insights from data. But what's really interesting, right, is to get the data culture right. As in, first thing you have to understand what matters. Why do you need the data? From where you can get the data? How much you can mine from it? So it starts from the that product mindset itself. You find what is valuable. Second, how can you acquire the data? Third, how do you build data pipelines? Once you have done that, now you already have the clarity. Then you get into analytics. At times you have to get into maybe basic graphs, basic time series analysis. But at times you're not that lucky. You have to also invest into training probably traditional ML models, or at times it also requires you to get into deep learning. At times you also see that you don't have the data, to train models, but still, how do you get into different type of modeling techniques where basically you are optimizing for less number of training samples, still, you want to bring that intelligence. So I think it's the entire journey. Now, what sort of, I'll say, works well if you have a team where your product managers, where your, all the CXOs, everyone understands, everyone feels that, this is what can be brought in, by looking at data from different perspective. Now, when I look at our journey, something that we did, and if I can say we did well, was tapping into thousands of different government data sources, really understanding how I can tap into all of them, bring it at the same place. Because if you look at different sources, they will say the same thing in different ways. There are different type of noises. We just heard about ontologies and all. Yes, I mean, how do you build ontologies? Because your data pipelines are complicated. You have to apply different sort of models, So there, definitely having cloud helps, because same for us, we know how to procure servers and how to manage it. But at the same time, sort of having a good hold on computer science helps, that, given infrastructure, how can you build upon it? So all of that really helps. And broadly today, we have been able to provide a singular interface to our clients where, if you want to do anything about any entity, you're getting that intelligence from, all of these sources at one place in a fraction of few seconds. In worst cases, probably a few minutes, where probably, traditionally banks or NBFCs would have taken probably months also for larger organizations. So that's the kind of impact that we've been able to create using data.
Well, I think that's a huge impact, on the tech landscape as we see it. Now, my next question to you stems from a very sensitive, aspect about data, which is about security, privacy. We see that, a lot of discourse and discussions and debates around, data privacy, security, all of that. In such a fast evolving landscape where you also see and also visualize a lot of very regulatory and compliance oriented directives and instructions coming, how do you see the entire thing panning out, and how do you ensure that the basic tenets are met?
Very relevant question, actually. So there, if you look at the entire landscape, it starts with probably simpler compliance requirements, that hey, you need to have probably data placed in India. I mean, there are certain broader level compliances that you have to adhere to. And with all the major CSPs, that is something which is quite easy if you are in a country like India, where there's a massive presence. But again, it doesn't stop there, right? How do you look at your different PII data points? So there has to be a lot of investment into the anonymization algorithms, because I mean, it gets tricky if you want to mine value out of data, but at the same time you want to, mask the sensitive data points. We do invest a lot of time in understanding how this can be anonymized. We also created a construct of, we call it KID, which is Curse Identifier. We started selling it to our clients, saying that if you want to interact with, let's say, our data lakes and all of that, let's talk in terms of KID. And the way we can derive it, that can be kept, even, let's say, within your premises, or we can have that mapping. So broadly, then we can work at an identifier level, which is probably nothing for any for any person outside the organization, but there's something which we understand. Also, I mean, when you look at the data strategy, has to keep into consideration that not every data point is similar. So you have to have the data categorized and properly done. And then depending on the category, because compliance or basically information security requires a lot of investment as well if you want to do it right and if you want to do it really effective. So until unless you prioritize, either you are burning way too much or maybe you're not doing it properly. So categorize, prioritize, and then invest where you have to invest. And lastly, we have to give it to cloud. There are a lot of services, managed services, which really simplifies our life. Now, today we can build an API without investing a lot, saying that is compliant even at PCI level, just because, the underlying PaaS components that we're using, they are PCI compliant. So I don't really have to build that expertise for that particular infrastructure. So that sort of helps. And again, there are a lot of services around, your monitoring, be it your DDoS, some of the things that's speaking about. But again, it goes beyond that. You have really smart intrusion detection sort of services where MLAI is given off the shelf. So you don't have to really, break your head to look at zero-day attacks. So there's a lot of value addition again coming in from client. And lastly, I think government is also trying to sort of, one way government is open to, this entire concept of sharing the data, and specifically have to give it to the Indian government. They have been quite open in terms of, giving that sort of visibility that, businesses can use that data, can get smarter with, alternate lending, financial inclusion. But at the same time, yes, there are work around, how can we regulate it better? So we are also waiting more instructions, understanding, how can you fine tune the data categorization, those algorithms, and obviously grow with cloud security offerings.
Right. So we do agree that data security and privacy continues to be kind of a gray area, and it would take time for regulations and legislations to really be fine tuned. Also, it's really heartening to know that there are tools and technologies at the disposal of enterprises, which can help them in securing their data. Excellent points coming from you. Now,
one small addition, even if you
yes.
look at the entire AI framework, that's a fairly smart move if you look at the account aggregation, because that's another very secure way of exchanging data where, the custodians themselves are enabling a very secure and a very, I'll say, well-planned, well-thought way of exposing data, so that, I can get the beauty of knowing a lot about the customer without really getting into, being the custodian of the data. So I guess a lot of strategy is being worked out in the entire ecosystem level. So again, it's quite heartening to see these initiatives.
Right. And I also agree with you that, the quality of the data that you have and the qualification of that data and the efforts to prioritize, what data you need and how to handle it, that would help enterprises immensely as they try to secure their data. Excellent points coming from you, Alok. Now, I really want to go to Yashoraj. So, Yashoraj, you came up with this concept of responsible lending. What were the best outcomes that you saw or that you visualized coming in front of you due to your digital disruption of this space? Particularly, the space that we have currently is that of fintechs.
So thanks for that question. And I think there were some really good points raised before and spoken. And I happen to be a customer of Karza as well. So kudos to the work Alok has been doing at Karza. So just to give a brief background, what we've been doing at Kashi is that something similar to what FT Cash is trying to achieve, that we felt that the India really needs a credit-led financial services a player out there which is using tech to sort of push the boundaries in financial inclusion. because just to give statistics, which I have quoted at a few other places as well, that credit scores in general, their bureau scores, your standard CIBIL, Experian, Equifax scores of the world, that is being used as a proxy for you to get credit from anywhere. And if we actually peel the onion and look at how many people actually have bureau scores in India, only 10% of India is actually credit scored. And only 10% of Indians who actually have a score good enough to be lent money by a bank. So we're talking about the formal financial institutions in India being able to cover, say, maximum 2 to 3% of India's population. Where do the rest go? They go to your traditional money lenders, your loan sharks of the world, anybody and everybody lending at usurious rates at 100% plus per annum, right? And because they're not able to access credit, they do not have any exposure to the formal financial ecosystem, and hence they definitely cannot access things like, say, insurance and investments ever in their lives, right? Now there's a whole bunch of stuff that has happened from the government side. You have the programs like, say, a Jan Dhan Yojana, because of which you have savings accounts being opened at a massive scale, right? And people are accessing the formal financial ecosystem through that one touch point, because of which they are creating traces of interactions to the formal financial economy, because of which now you can use that data to sort of probably offer credit to them. So we said that, hey, look, there is a massive population out there that is generating a very strong digital footprint on alternative channels like buying patterns, spending patterns. How are they interacting with their digital channels that they access every day? What is the everyday behavior looking like on alternate channels that we can actually access? And then can we go out there and create an alternative credit score that basically uses these alternate behavioral insights and tries to find out how these are correlated to future financial behavior of their customers, particularly to credit. Then use credit as an entry point to be then able to offer other curated financial products like, say, investments and insurance to the same customers, because in the act of evaluating these people for credit, you have basically, obviously with explicit consent, captured some XYZ amount of data on them, which can be then used to model their financial preferences with respect to other products as well, right? And that's really what we've been trying to do, and we believe that we've been successful in doing that for the last 5 to 6 years, and we continue to sort of expand on that as we go ahead. We've obviously always been cloud native. I do not think our business can exist outside of a cloud. All our AI, our analytics, our machine learning is powered, resides on, and is serviced on the cloud, and so is all our traffic that comes in. We have not just used this in India, but we believe that we have been successful enough to now actually offer our AI systems at scale as a SaaS in other emerging economies as well outside of India, all on the cloud as well. So yeah, that's what I'd like to highlight about Kashi.
Wonderful. So I think it's a very noble initiative as far as financial inclusion is concerned. And there is a vast majority of the Indian population which continues to lie beyond the boundaries of systemic financial institutions. That's a great initiative. So my next point to you is, what were the challenges that you were confronted with, that you were faced with when you were trying to facilitate this wonderful initiative?
So I think there's any business like this has technical, operational, as well as business related challenges when you start up operational, because when you started off in 2016, the world was a completely different paradigm. It might seem like a very short while ago, but in 2016 when we started off, there was nothing called UPI, right? So that's just to set things in context about what we're talking about, right? Although obviously cloud systems were there, but we still call AI as an emerging tech, but it was really emerging tech back then, right? Today, it is actually out there everywhere. So people are having some aspect of exposure to analytics out there in every organization, but it was really emerging tech when you talk about 2015, 16. So when it comes to tech-related challenges, first is data, obviously. If you're trying to build an alternative credit scoring engine that is completely alternate to your traditional bureau indicators, there is always a cold start problem. Like, you'd not have a model on day zero that will be like giving you high grade predictions. It will take its own time for you to collect the data, being able to sort of have an iterative sequences of models running on that to a state that you actually can rely on that in giving out money in production in real time, right? And that doesn't happen in day zero. It doesn't happen in 5 to 6 months as well. It takes its own time. It would have probably, if we started it today, it would have probably happened in a more accelerated fashion just because of the kind of smartphone internet penetration that is there out there compared to even 5 years back. So people are more comfortable with accessing financial services digitally, and hence the consumer footprint that you can get today is a lot more than what you would have even 4 to 5 years back. So data and infrastructure were challenges back then. Second was delivering services digitally. India stack is there today. It was also there back then, but not in the shape it is today. So services, even as basic as KYC, were things that you had to still figure your head around in terms of how you're going to do in a completely digital format. Giving out money, doing repayments, figuring out your customer profile all in a matter of seconds was something that was something of a challenge, although it seems like something that can probably figure out overnight as well today. So that's what I would tell about this.
So Anuj, we have been talking about something which is very, very relevant to the tech landscape in general, and also, with respect to the fintechs, and which is, how they have leveraged the innovation quotient. And we all understand that in today's day and age, if enterprises have to thrive, they will have to be very, very innovative. In fact, there was a report a couple of days back which said that India has climbed up several steps, as far as the innovation index is concerned. What are your views on it? How did you use or leverage innovation to really drive your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't believe in all this culture of innovation and all of this stuff. I think it's a buzzword. Before you can get into this culture of innovation, do you have a culture of making mistakes? That's the first step. And I think that any enterprises, we sell to enterprises, and you've seen this, that there is that risk aversion towards I cannot make mistake. Every company will go out there and say, we have a culture of innovation, but you make one mistake and it's like, what happened? So I think, this sort of, this shift, till it doesn't come with all of us, there are some, illustrious founders here, folks here who, have been part of the ecosystem, again in the audience as well. If we are not able to encourage this constant culture of mistake, right? And obviously, right, none of us talking about silly mistakes, but it's that moment where you try these things out, right? In our tech world, we are, privy to so many of these frameworks, like the PDCA framework, plan, do, check, adjust, right? This iterative model. So I think till we don't look at that, right? Till we don't look at that, there will not be that culture of innovation. Second is also the ecosystem generally at large, just the families, we grow up in, there is risk aversion because it always tends to be like, take the safe path. And that kind of takes in, at some point there is this thought process which also creeps in, maybe some of this is projection, is where you look at like, okay, now I've got a secure job and I'm in a good position now. I don't want to innovate more. Chal raha hai, So I think that till we are able to really bring that in consciousness, that is the thing. There is other also aspects of it, like again, let's moving a bit to like entrepreneurship. Like you see this in the US, there is a culture, there is a celebration of failure all the time, right? Here, sometimes it can be a little bit, I think, of course, as entrepreneurs, we fail every day. That's the honest truth. But long-winded answer, I would say that, before anyone is looking at culture of innovation, create a culture of failure, create a culture of mistakes. That's where you will see that innovation actually emerge through that.
So when you were trying to really innovate, what were the technologies that you banked upon and which proved crucial for your efforts?
Right. There's this, I forget the actual saying. It's that Bane in Batman, he says, right? I was born in this, you were merely molded by this. I forget the exact quote, right? So when we talk about like cloud, most of us, we are like born in the cloud, like
digital natives.
Yeah. So like we talk to folks in our teams and all, and digital natives, right? Like we talk to folks in our team, and that's the de facto, So when you go to other models of operating, it's always like that's an explanation which happens. So I think that's a shift, right?
True.
Especially, specifically like when you're looking to build on, innovate model. There's so much tech. Someone spoke earlier about, I think you're talking about compliance angle, where like the cloud is allowing you today, through microservices, through so many different aspects, the ability to really focus on what you need to do, to grow your business. That power is something which is, first time for our generation. It's the first time that we have that power where we are able to, we dream of it and we say, okay, there must be some API for this. Let's pull this in, let's do this and move forward on it.
So I think, yes, you're right. A risk-based approach or culture is absolutely essential to it. Now, I really would want to go to Ashutosh. Ashutosh, so we have seen, we have gone through all these exemplary stories of, new enterprises, entrepreneurship, really disrupting the financial services space. How, in your opinion, how has technology been an enabler of, enterprises and entrepreneurship?
I think it's heartening, first of all, to see that there's so much of innovation, in the digital native, like many of the people sitting on this stage, are probably, exceptions. I don't think they are the norm, and that's the sad part. So I think for enterprises, these are aliens. We do work with, as a services company, we do work with a lot of digital natives who are trying to create disruptive products which leverage technology. And to a great extent, the challenges that classic enterprises face is that they just have too much baggage, right?
Legacy.
Yeah. I wouldn't just call it legacy baggage. An organizational structure that is built on a reality. You said that 2016 to now, the reality has changed. So you can imagine an organization that has been created decades ago has systems, processes, and organizational structures which are largely irrelevant today. So the opportunity and the challenge both is technology. Opportunity is that you can cannibalize your existing organization, right? But that's not easy to do. A digital native doesn't have that baggage. They don't have that challenge. But as simple an issue as saying, I need to move my, systems to the cloud. And you wonder, is this digital transformation? And, first, why are you even having systems, right? People like these will say, why do you even have systems in the first place? But I think that's where the perception of what is technology and what do you consider to be innovation is such a huge spectrum for enterprises that there's no benchmark for them to be able to pit themselves and say, what am I supposed to do? I'm glad to know that there is so much of facility that has come out of innovative large platforms like Google, which have provided for facilities today that make most of traditional technology investments redundant by and large. But I think the challenge is exactly that. Though there is an opportunity that you are able to use platforms like Google Cloud, the challenge is that you have legacy technology. And so though technology is a great opportunity, I think it is also a hurdle in some ways, and especially legacy technology is a big hurdle to adoption of new technologies. And that's where the big conundrum is, I guess.
Wow, that's a wonderfully profound response from you, Ashutosh, where you touched upon the entire spectrum of human thought and evolution. And you also spoke about, technology being an enabler as well as a hurdle. Really, Siddharth, if we could have your thoughts on that.
So I think I very much agree on the thought that was being spoken. What I believe is that technology today, because we work with enterprises, we work with fintechs, we work with NBFCs as well. So we have seen the whole gamut, of organizations with less baggage, organizations who have the access to newer technologies. And sadly, even though they're young at 5 years, the technology shift is so fast and so drastic that I heard someone else say earlier today that new startups are emerging which are kind of taking up and taking their position. So as disruptors in this ecosystem, what we've seen is that there's a need to balance the transition as well, because the legacy systems that exist in larger say financial organizations especially have a lot of compliance checks which are already pre-built in, right? And probably the organizations don't themselves know how to bring those compliances to the cloud. And that's wherein enablers, like I see all of us here as enablers, where our job comes in, to bring in the technology to say that, yes, this is going to run on the cloud, and to convince them to kind of take that shift or take that leap of faith. And through that process comes in expertise, comes in the domain knowledge, to handhold them through those business problems, because we service all across the gamut from lending, credit monitoring, decisioning, regulatory compliance. We build data lakehouses for them. We do MIS reporting for them. So there is a lot of appetite in terms of data consumption, right? How we leverage that appetite, how do we marry it with domain, and how do we bring in those competencies through the assurance of experience? That has really been a defining factor for us, because a client is not going to trust you just because of your single digit experience, or is not going to trust you just because you're fast, but they're going to trust you because you can do that job or that dream that they have to shift what they have working today into the cloud and make it massive, make it grow maybe 10x, bring them the kind of insights that today they cannot do on a typical relational data store that they are managing with a humongous server. And some of the servers I've seen on-premise in enterprise environments, they are huge. They're absolutely huge. You need just a fraction of that on the cloud. So optimally reusing resources, building your code or your application towards an app modernization methodology. All of these are part of the newer coding paradigm. And especially with newer machine learning and AI models coming in, the real question is not what is the model you're building. The real question is not how you're deploying it anymore. The question really is, how is your model going to evolve over a period of time? What is going to happen when the underlying, say, platform that you're using is itself upgrading, is itself going to add a lot of features or heavy lifting that you're doing today, right? So for us, that has been the whole shift and transition.
Very relevant point coming from you, where you spoke about the extreme criticality of something like change management, where you have to adapt to the fast evolving technology landscape. Now, I would really want to bring in Shashi into the discussion. So Shashi, I'm just going back to the premise of your previous talk, and which was, how are you trying to do different problems and tackle different problems in a different way, in a unique way?
Sure. Thanks, Mukbil. Before I start answering that question, and the answer is definitely not off what I already spoke, but I'll tell you, right, we have been in panels like these before the pandemic and after the pandemic. The composition has changed, and I love, and I can tell you, all of you are sitting in this room, I really have very high hopes of all of these folks, and they are changing the landscape of India business. So thank you guys. The articulation, the thought process, and whatever you have is amazing. Coming to your question, Mukbil, what Sears does differently? See, I don't think we are doing anything differently for organizations. What we have done are three things. Each time Google Cloud comes up with a new product, new technology, new innovation, we try to pick that up and try to pick up a use case and try to solve it. A simple example, if Google Cloud today is launching up Workbench, and Workbench is a product which comes to market, let's say 6 months down the line or 3 months down the line, can we equip ourselves and make sure that the models that people are going to deploy today on the cloud, we are ready so that when they want to use that product, we can handhold them and take it to that. So that's one way that we do things differently. Prepare, do, drive. The second part of it, when you have the experience of working with 3,000, 4,000, 10,000, number doesn't matter. But when you have worked along with customers, you always know the problem which a small person has faced and a large company has faced. And mind you, the problems are never different. The approaches of how they solve those are different. And you just take those learnings, of somebody how a small company solved a problem, the same technical problem, and how a large organization is trying to adopt it. We just try to marry that. And you don't have to be a teacher for it. When you do it, people pick it up themselves. That's the other way of how we are trying to solve a problem differently. The third part of this whole gamut of things, right? Just keeping an open mind. And when I say open mind, we ourselves, and somebody talked about the failure, the culture of failure and being adept part of it. Whenever you are embarking on a new technology, we are sure to fail. And a lot of people are here in the club. We took up 4 weeks back a migration project and we are getting beaten black and blue every single day because those servers just don't want to move. And there are lots of issues in that, right? The problem is we know that we are on the right path. The algorithm or whatever you may say, the methodology or the process is correct, but we are failing. But we are open. And when we are open, we can convince our customers saying, don't worry, we have done this 50 times. Maybe we look like fools, but this is how it is. So when we are open for failure, when we are changing, when we are driving, I think the customers come along. So those are the 3 ways of how we are trying to solve differently. Picking up from Google Cloud, learning from our mistakes and taking the customer along, and bridging the gap from multiple organizations of what we are learning and telling them this is the right way to do it.
Absolutely. And I particularly liked that line of yours that problems are the same, but approaches to solving them vary according to the size or the scale of an organization or an enterprise. Excellent point coming from you, Shashi. Now, Naren, we have had a gamut of perspectives from the technology leaders who are here. So I think you are best positioned for a nuanced response on how you are enabling businesses and enterprises today.
So I made this reference earlier and I'll give it with an example, and I think the story about UPI was mentioned earlier, and I just want to lead by giving you a small sneak peek. I don't know how many of you are already aware of this, of the work that Google Cloud is doing in the UPI space, for example, and I'll sort of talk about it also on culture of, encouraging culture of failure and celebrating that. So financial services as an industry, and a lot of fintech leaders here, we in Google Cloud realize that there's a huge potential for this market, and we'll have to solve for industry specific stuff in India. And a few months back, maybe a year and a half back, we were presented with this problem that the big issue in India right now is the UPI backbone, right? There's a lot of ecosystem that rides on UPI, and those of you who are here from the fintech will know that there are 2 pieces of the UPI ecosystem. There's the merchant side of the UPI ecosystem, and there's the issuer side of the UPI ecosystem. So it's a complex, while the tech appears simple to us when we open Google Pay and scan a code and the money just goes, it appears pretty simple. But there are 2 payment switches involved. There's a switch involved on the merchant side, which accepts that payment. It passes through NPCI backbone and then goes to the issuer switch, which is the bank switch, which is the @ OK ICICI or HDFC or whatever, right? So the tech is complex, and that's sort of the mission we are on, right? This is a small example, but we, with one of our participating banks, have now built UPI switch as a service on Google Cloud. The issuer part of the switch is already generally available. So any customer of ours who has an issuer license from NPCI, you can fire it up, but if you don't have a license, you won't be able to connect to NPCI. But we pretty much allow any entity to basically use our issuer switch. And it's basically a pay-as-you-go service. No servers are involved. You pay by API calls you make. If you make one API call, you pay a cent. If you make, I'm not saying that the price is a cent, but please, I don't know what the price is. But that's sort of where we are going, right? And very soon we will also have the merchant side of the switch generally available early next year. So that's how we are solving for larger problems. That's how we are solving for India scale. And we also believe that some of these some of these India-specific solutions, like UPI, will find resonance with other developing economies, and we will export this tech, and as a result, the backbone that we are building on Google Cloud will also be needed across the spectrum. Are we going to have difficulties in the first few installations that we do and implementations that we do? Is our backend wiring with NPCI and all the network connectivity and all the ISP models all figured out? No, but we'll figure it out, right? We will make mistakes. We share that culture of doing quick innovation. We share that culture of learning from our mistakes, celebrating failure. Maybe it's a hard word, but at least taking that feedback of that failure and reiterating and putting it back into the product lifecycle very quickly. And that's the reason why we want to work with our customers very closely. Our engineering teams want, and our solution teams want to work with you very closely so that we can iterate on this model fast. Some of these things have never been done at the scale that we are doing right now. So there's bound to be teething issues in the beginning, but I think the way to do it is to circle back and adopt very quickly. But I'll tell you another thing, and back to your, I think you made the most pertinent point about culture of accepting the culture of failure to some extent. What I have seen is that a lot of cycles of innovation are being spent, even within digital natives, trying to solve for problems that are already solved for, right? I think that is becoming an Achilles heel, and I don't think we are at a time in tech where you need to, for example, deploy your own OCR engine anymore. I see a lot of startups spending cycles of data scientist time building image recognition, character recognition, speech detection, text to speech models getting deployed on large servers in the cloud. Not needed. Those problems are solved for. I'm okay with promoting a culture of failure and culture of innovation and experimentation that doesn't necessarily yield results, but not in areas which have been solved for. So, problems like translation, ASR, speech detection, speech to text, text to speech, OCR, image recognition, image classification. I believe a lot of these problems companies like us have solved for, and they're available as API calls. Why are we spending cycles, CPU cycles of innovation, both people and server cycles, in solving for problems that have already been solved? So I think that's where I want to, maybe urge some of the digital natives that are on the panel and in the audience today to use your cycles of both human capital and tech capital wisely. And some of it will fail, but don't use it in areas that have been already solved for.
That's a very relevant point coming from you, and a very debatable point. And I think we'll need another panel discussion, a full-fledged panel discussion to deliberate on this extremely relevant point that you have raised. Now, however, in the interest of time, I think we will need to wrap this up. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.